You've just guessed it, my favourite time of the week. It's Talking Pints. I'm joined by Tim Shipman. Tim, welcome to the programme.
Thank you, Nigel. I think this is the first time you've bought, isn't it?
Oh, so typical of these Fleet Street types. It really, really is. How many years in journalism now?
27, of which 24 in Westminster. So
you did the Express.
Yeah.
When I first spoke to you on the phone a long time ago, you were at the Mail.
Yeah. And then a couple of years in the States for the Sunday Telegraph, back to the Mail, and then 10 years this week at the Sunday Times.
What's the big difference between working for a Sunday paper as opposed to a daily?
Well, it's all about digging around. It's about who you know and the contacts you can develop and coming up with stories. You're trying to look backwards and kind of move on what's been happening that week, but also break some new ground. And you've got more time to do that than you have on the dailies. You're not worrying about...
More pressure on a Sunday than a daily, or other way around?
No, I think there's more pressure on a Sunday, because if you've got a big hit and you get it on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, you've got that nervousness about whether is it going to hold.
Yeah.
And particularly during, a lot of the Brexit period and, the May government and things were leaking within minutes, let alone days.
And what are 10 years?
Yeah.
What an amazing 10 years when we think about, where we were in 14. We've had Brexit, we've had the dramas, we had the rise and fall of Jeremy Corbyn, and now they're on the Conservatives on their fifth Prime Minister since they came to power. When was the last time we had such turbulence?
I think probably the only comparable period was the 70s, wasn't it, where you had kind of two elections in 74 with slightly different, an industrial unrest and proper kind of nasty feeling on both sides of the political divide.
I think we had that division in the country in the 70s, but our politics was more stable in the 70s.
Yes, that's arguably the case.
Because we had 4 years of Conservatives, 5 years of Labour during that decade. This is all over the shop.
I think there's a decent argument that this is the most turbulent decade domestically, putting wars to the one side, since the Great Reform Act, isn't it? It's kind of...
Is Brexit at the centre of this? Is it that Westminster found the will of the people just too difficult to deal with?
I think it's two things, isn't it? Yes, Brexit's at the centre of it, but from both ends. I think Brexit revealed a lot of divisions that had been there probably most notably since the 2008 crash, and a lot of people felt pretty hairily about politics. And Brexit revealed all that. It then exacerbated it, and people formed teams and camps and took sides. And because it was so badly handled by Theresa May and others, the chaos was never really dealt with, and it just spiralled and spiralled and spiralled, and people got more and more into those kind of armed camps. And I think, culturally, we're still stuck with a lot of those divisions, even if the politics has calmed down a little bit. But, Tory MPs then got a taste for sort of the taste of blood and quite enjoyed it. And once you've turfed out 2 or 3 prime ministers...
Keep going.
Well, if you don't think they're doing well, then you're kind of used to it. Once you've rebelled once, or once
this
you've
may happen again.
Once, why stop there?
It may happen again. Who knows what will happen with the results next Thursday? We've got big mayoral elections, but not big, but reasonable-sized local elections. See, what fascinates me, Tim, is, I was an outsider in all of this, an agitator, getting millions of votes for UKIP, Brexit Party, etc. I really wonder whether part of the problem is the Conservative government had to accept Brexit ultimately, but never really believed in it.
Well, I think the problem was across the whole Parliament. 70% of MPs back Remain, and the country didn't. And I think, to be fair to Theresa May, she did believe in trying to deliver on it. She just didn't really know what it meant, and she wasn't able to persuade anybody that what she ended up thinking it meant was what it ought to mean. And by then, everybody had sort of dug themselves into their trenches. The Conservative Party is a fractious beast, as you know, and it's got many factions within it, because we have this first-past-the-post system. It's a massive coalition of different things. But I think it was there to be led.
They call it a broad church.
Yes.
And I now say it's a broad church with no religion.
Well, that may be the case. And also, these were religious wars almost, weren't they? In their intensity. And
they were. Now, you've chronicled all this in a book that is out today. So let's have a look.
There we go. No Way Out. So this is volume 3 of what is now a 4-part quartet covering the whole of 2016 up to now. So this is the agonising Theresa May years.
And what you don't get right in this...
what have you spotted?
Well... I think it's very interesting.
There's a whole chapter on how very good at politics the Brexit Party was.
Yeah, I mean, we got rid of Theresa May, not the Conservative Party. And there's a narrative that says it was ruthless Boris that got rid of Theresa May.
Well, I think a lot of the ERG, the Spartans would say that
they saved the day.
That they dug in at the right time and stopped things going any further. And a combination of people understanding that they could change the rules of the leadership contests as well. So the ERG worked out that May was not safe, having been they tried to oust her, they didn't succeed, she's supposed to have 12 more months, but they went to the deathbed of the bloke who'd written the rules, and he said, no, you can change the rules, and the sort of men in grey suits went to Theresa May and said, hop it, or we change the rules.
Actually, she resigned tearfully before the final results of the European elections were out. If you remember the timescale of that, it was fascinating.
Well, it was about a 3-day count, wasn't it?
It was, because we voted
She decided to go,
we voted on Thursday, but the rest of Europe voted on Sunday.
She basically decided to go on the Wednesday evening, but wanted to wait until after people had gone to the polls. And then, delivered of the worst national result that the Conservative Party's ever seen.
In
8.9%.
90 years. Yeah. Could they be heading for that at the next general election?
I mean, all the polls suggest that is a possibility. Political gravity suggests that it ought to tighten, and when you listen to a focus group, the lack of enthusiasm for Keir Starmer makes you think that it might, but we've had predictions that it will for a very long time, and it hasn't yet. So obliteration is certainly a plausible outcome.
Well, there is an insurgent party called Reform.
There is, yes. I mean, tell us about it.
I'm really the honorary
president. I think most people, Nigel, I think the most interesting question in British politics at the moment is whether you're planning to go back and run the thing. Or whether you're just planning to take over the Tory party afterwards.
I haven't decided.
No.
I haven't decided.
Anyone would think you're enjoying this.
I'm off to America next week to see some friends over there. Yeah. And I've got some very big decisions to make myself about what I do. John Curtis, Sir John, the doyen of political commentators, one of the least rash men you'd ever meet, says it's 99% certain that Keir Starmer is going to be the Prime Minister. And you're right about the lack of enthusiasm. There'll be no honeymoon, will there?
No, I don't think so. I suspect. Well, look, several things will happen. If he does have a big majority, then all the opposition will come from within the Labour Party, like it did under Blair and Brown. You'll have a very big bunch of people on the soft left and the further, slightly harder left who will want to hold his feet to the fire and get what the unions want. And you'll also have a moment, does it come 9 weeks or 9 months in, where everybody realises there's still no money and it wasn't all the fault of wicked Conservatives, that there are
sort of endemic problems
structural
in the NHS,
difficulties, that productivity's been lousy for 20 years and that probably longer than that. The economy's not in great shape. The NHS is taking up an ever-increasing proportion of state spending, and you've got this war going on. There's still the aftershocks of COVID, and it wasn't just Conservative incompetence or wickedness that caused all this. And Starmer hasn't, because it's been made easy for him, he hasn't really had to show the colour of his thought and the strength of his spine yet, and so it's all going to be a bit of an experiment.
Final thought, Tim. You think back, journalism, Fleet Street, the lifestyle, noisy newsrooms, larger-than-life characters, editors that were the most frightful bullies. I mean, that's what it was a few decades ago. Is journalism still fun?
Yeah, I mean, I still don't really feel like I've done a proper day's work. And there's still a few characters around, Nigel. I mean, you must, you glance in the mirror each morning, and there's a few others. Lunches are not as long as they were.
What a shame. How awful.
But some of us are getting older and can't hack all that, quite as well as even you can. So, yes, I mean, we're always complaining that politics is less colourful and less interesting than it used to be, or that politicians are, at least. I don't think politics is less interesting. But I think the interesting thing watching, if we do have a big clear out of MPs, there'll be a whole new load of people, some of whom will be talented and some of whom will be entertaining and some of whom will start staring mad, because in big majorities a lot of people get elected who just popped out for a newspaper and did not expect to find themselves in the House of Commons.
The more MEPs UKIP got elected, the more problems we had. Tim Shipman, No Way Out. This is my transatlantic reading as I head off to America.